Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. We appreciate it so much. My name is Barbara Petrozelli. I'm the director of the library at the Mount. And it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the iROC co-conspirators who include Vivian Milzarski, also from the library, and Evan Merkhofer from the Division of Natural Sciences. For those of you who may be new to iROC, iROC stands for Investigating Research on Campus. And this is a bi-weekly forum that lets us hear about the research that our faculty are doing, as well as often the work that our students are doing either on their own or in conjunction with Mount faculty. The next iROC session will happen 2 weeks from today on Tuesday, October 29th. It will be at 12:45 p.m. and will feature Michael Fox from the School of Business, who will be speaking on electronics, law, and society. So we hope you'll mark your calendar and join us for that presentation as well. Just a couple of housekeeping details before we get started. We are recording this session. However, you're not obligated to keep your video on. If you'd rather not, that's perfectly okay. If you have questions or comments that you'd like to make, please use the chat. At the end of the talk, Viv will kind of go back through the chat and remind you of the question that you had at that point and call on you. So you can use the chat to capture your thoughts as we go along, or of course, wait till the end to ask Ludmila any questions you might have. Please remember to mute yourself during the presentation so that we don't have any interruptions in Ludmila's talk. Those of you who may be here for FYE, we will be taking FYE attendance via the Zoom attendance list, and that will be sent directly to the FYE office, so there's nothing further that you have to do on your end. And then finally, if there are any community members here who don't already receive emails from me about the events and programs going on at Kaplan Library, please, you could use the chat also to give us your email address, and be happy to add you to our events notification list. Thanks again for being here with us. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to my colleague, Vivian, to introduce today's special guest.
Dr. Ludmila Smirnova is a professor of education who has conducted over 20 years of intensive research on how to use digital technology effectively in the classroom. She is an expert on Web 2.0 technology and collaborated with an Israeli educator to create massive online courses on Moodle and other digital technologies, which have been taught to audiences of thousands, representing educators from every corner of the world. Dr. Smirnova possesses a strong background in and commitment to constructivist, student-centered, inquiry-based, and collaborative pedagogy. She believes that the current widespread move to online learning offers an outstanding opportunity to use digital technology to power up pedagogy and learning. Throughout her educational career in Russia, Ludmila continually explored new insights and approaches to teaching. She created innovative schools in southern Russia to address ecological education and the arts. She pioneered study abroad in Western countries. She trained in both the international and American approaches to the Montessori method of teaching and designed the first 2 Montessori schools to open in southern Russia. As a professor of education, she supervised 6 doctoral dissertations in comparative education. She was dean of the prestigious School of Foreign Languages at the Volgograd Pedagogical University for a decade before coming to the US. After serving as an exchange professor at Ramapo College of New Jersey, with whom her school in Russia had a long-term collaborative relationship, Ludmila came to Mount St. Mary College in 2001. At the Mount, she has taught many courses in the education program, outfitting each with the appropriate digital technology. She has been the counselor of the Kappa Delta Pi Honor Society for more than 15 years. Please welcome Dr. Ludmila Smirnova.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful presentation and introduction. So let me share and begin. All right, so welcome everybody to this presentation. And I'm here to share my story about my sabbatical. And I usually start my courses and add this phrase to my syllabus. The choice for all teachers is to meet new challenges. And they can either accept the challenge and excel or be defeated. So I invite you to this Monday. It's a challenge. So we're all working from home and let's do it. So I was granted this sabbatical. And right now I would like to start with telling you a story. It's almost like a tale of two intertwining wines. Because when I sat down to write my book, I faced the dilemma. And two competing projects came to mind. The first is a critical comparative book on the capture of American education by behaviorism and the need for a constructivist revolution. And the second is an applied book on innovative teaching with technology that attempts to facilitate this revolution. And the trunk, I will start with the trunk, which is my biography. And actually Vivian spoke and told most of the facts that from my life story. But I have been fortunate enough to be in the vortex of deep educational reflections of these past 40 years that really built my perspective and shaped my views and helped me form my educational philosophy. So I was born in Russia, in Volgograd, which is in southern Russia. And as all kids, I became a pioneer from the first day at school because pioneer organization was embedded in schooling, in schools, as a way of improving and promoting individualism and at the same time collaborative and social responsibility. So I was a pioneer leader, and I was helping my friends to become better, to become excellent learners. And at the same time, it really built my desire to become a teacher. And also by the end of school, I became a top pioneer leader. It's a pioneer organization. It's like a scout. It's like scouts in the United States and in Europe. And this really built my desire. I really, during school years, I developed my love for foreign language, English, and my love for teaching. So I knew what I would do when I graduated, when I finished school. So, and I was lucky enough to live in the city where was Volgograd State Pedagogical University, which is the national leader in educational theory and training. So but the issue was, the problem was that at that time in the university in the USSR, there was an affirmative act that only there was a preference for rural students to admit in the first place. And being a city person, I had to persevere to really prove and gain my desire to become a teacher. So it took me 3 years to convince. And when I became a student, I excelled. All the years I was an excellent student. I got presidential scholarships. And right after graduation from the university, I became a deputy principal of extracurriculum activities. And parallelly, I was invited to teach at my alma mater, to teach English first. And then the only PhD school was in education. There was no linguistic school. So my chair of English department said, Ludmila, we need to support innovative teaching. So go for it. And that's yours. So I was enrolled in the program in education and was awarded in 1987. I was awarded PhD in theory and practice of education. And my doctoral thesis was dealt with educational benefits of experiential learning. And my students, my project was about searching for war artifacts and creating museums of soldiers' glory. And students really excelled in that. So, and after graduating from PhD school, after defending my thesis, I started working as an educational professor. And there were quite a few projects, and Vivienne already named that I had 6 PhD students and my about 40 master's degree students, master's thesis. And besides that, I was also leading some of the projects innovation. And I was on the board of city administration on, especially after perestroika, there were opened channels to create new schools. And luckily, the president of the university, Stanislav Glazachev, was the leader in ecological education. He was the father of creating ecological gymnasium, and I am, together with my colleagues, was at the forefront of this initiative. And besides that, to tell the truth, we were, being a student at foreign languages, School of Foreign Languages, we were not allowed to go abroad until the wall fell. But as a student, I had a chance to go to East Europe, to Germany, and that's how there was a collaboration. But after that, we didn't have any chance to travel. And only after wall fell, I had another chance to go to, already as a professor. I went to East Germany and I was spending time, but I came to the university that ceased to exist. I came to discuss the program for social work, and I was redirected to the Arnhem Nijmegen School in Netherlands. And the following year, I was invited to teach, to speak with and work with a group of social workers. And the first group that then I trained in Russian. I introduced the Russian culture, and I brought those students to Volgograd to start introducing social work the first time in the history of Russian universities. And but during that time, I was introduced also, I asked to visit Montessori schools. And that's Montessori was like an ideal to me. And because again, Montessori, the headquarters of Montessori education was in Holland. And I requested to visit the centers for Montessori training, Montessori schools. And I came back home, I started promoting and sharing the ideas. And a few principals of schools came to me, and they wanted to start, they were so enthused about Montessori education that they asked me to help them start Montessori in their schools. And having this collaboration with Netherlands, I arranged a training, and I went in 1994 with a Montessori summer for me. I had my training in international Montessori education, and then in St. Louis, in Chesterfield Day School, I got training in American Society Montessori education. And we started 2 schools in Southern Russia. And actually, I was called a mother of Montessori in Southern Russia. And the innovative, that's really was in essence of, I saw the power of collaboration. I saw the power of innovation, and I saw a power of constructivism, because Montessori was one of the minds in constructivist minds. And at that time, I was elected a dean of School of Foreign Languages, and my innovations here didn't stop. My innovations were from installing European type of toilets in my school. It was the only school that had civilized toilets, and setting up centers of American, British, and French cultures, and setting up the program, certified program for character development in collaboration with Colorado, and also sound laboratory labs for learning English. So in the university actually awarded me a prestigious award later on, where I already left, but when they celebrating 75th anniversary, I got a prestigious award from the college, from the university. And at that time, I also established the collaboration with Ramapo, and in 1998, I came as an exchange professor to teach at Ramapo College, and I stayed for a year and wrote a grant together with other colleagues at Ramapo. And the highlight of that stay was meeting Jerome Bruner, the psychologist and the father of constructivism in the American education. And because one of my students, Russian students, was writing PhD dissertation about influence of Bruner on not only in Russian, but on other systems of education. And so I came back in 2000, and I started teaching, and for the first time in many years, I really got a glimpse of what American education was. Besides, my son came with me, and I had a chance to go to schools. So on my way back, I continued my friendship with Jerome Bruner, and periodically we were meeting and having conversations, and I really enjoyed this friendship and learning from the author and the founder of Discovery Learning. And in 2001, I became a Mount professor. So this all, I wanted to share my story just to share my foundations for my educational philosophy. And it's about constructivism, and that is about student-centered education, inquiry-based, experiential, and collaborative learning. And at the same time, I really witnessed, and during my time at Ramapo, I was already exposed to educational technology. I had some trainings, and I found that technology really helped me help my students to learn. And I saw the power of technology and as extension to my pedagogy. So, but at the same time, I had a pedagogy shock because the Skinnerian behaviors, not constructivism, was clearly the core and the center of teaching in schools and even at my division. It was true to public schools where drilling and testing, it's still now. Because of standardized testing really forces teachers to train, to drill, to practice a lot, and become, they really dominate in schools. And the divisional education, where we had also many specialists in special education, where direct instruction is really the core, but still many courses were taught through direct instruction, through lectures. In fact, what happened is that students found my pedagogy more foreign than my accent. And actually, I started using technology just to help my students learn. And I started using learning management system to post my materials. And I kept saying, okay, if you have problems with my accent, computer doesn't have an accent. Go to online, take the material and read and work. So I really enjoyed learning. I spent nights and days learning new technology, and I became an expert in educational technologies. And to tell the truth, I also was one of those at our college who studied different, we had WebCT, which is mostly, was at that time, it was mostly designed for delivery on information. It was mostly, again, for direct instruction, for delivery. But we were looking for learning management systems that promoted constructive ideas, how to help students to interact, collaborate, and produce something to promote a constructivist pedagogy. And Moodle was one of those, and I became an expert in that. And teachers and students with Web 2.0, with these constructivist tools, they become empowered to become immersed in inquiry and collaborative learning. So, and these are examples of my presentations. I became an online educator, and as Vivian also mentioned, so I, together with my colleague, we were running day and nights, sometimes at nights. we ran. I was a early adapter of online teaching because I was teaching online for many years, promoting constructivist technology and teaching, and through Moodles, through MOOCs, through webinars. And I became also a member of Educational Media Conference, AAC. And later on, I was also, and still now, elected in the board of this conference, executive board of this conference, and I'm a chair of special interest group on emerging technologies. So, but still there was resistance. I was there, I was in the center of using technology, but still the students and colleagues still had a hard time to receive use technology and use these innovative approaches to teaching. But and in schools, because some of my students were doing research how teachers are using technology. It was they discovered that sometimes schools were buying these smart boards. They were buying iPads, Chromebooks, laptops, and sometimes the tools were not used, or they were used below their potential, or left on the shelves. And smart boards, which are interactive boards, but they were used as blackboards just for delivery or for assessment. And that's where the school was. And I was designing constructivist pedagogy. I was designing curriculum for digital pedagogy in all my courses. I was a paperless professor since I started using a learning management system. I was posting everything online. All the materials were online, and interaction was with students online. And that's how idea of writing a book was intrigued me, and to promote digital pedagogy, to promote innovative teaching. And 2020, I was granted the sabbatical to write a book, but pandemic happened, and it was just the right time for me, and but I was already there. And in overnight, all teachers who were resistant to this, to pedagogy, to education, to technology, and those who were savvy, they were involuntarily forced to use technology, were exposed to digital teaching. Teachers were struggling because some were not prepared to teach remotely. But my students from my courses, they were excelled during this time. And I got so many letters and messages and phone calls saying thank you, that you pushed us harder, but now I got a job, I got a position of tutor. They were telling me that they were ready for this situation, for this challenge. And so this work that I had in mind and I had to set up for, it was really timely. And post-pandemic pedagogy, it really shows that teaching won't be the same. And now teachers who are using remote teaching, they use tools that when they come back to face-to-face teaching, they will be using them in real situations. So the digital education revolution has now occurred. And so I started writing the book, and I kept in mind, and this is actually a working title for my book, "The less we teach, the more they learn." And I studied the book, and if writing a book, conventional book, it's usually kind of lecture. The reader is just a reader, it's passive. But I wanted to challenge myself to write a book where there is interaction and there is inquiry. So I came up with the idea and started writing a book in a form of a workshop format. So that was my first line. I addressed the reader as if I were running a workshop. I made accessible and concrete abstract ideas. And first I give an overview, and then I give tasks to students to follow the exploration part, and then they are engaged in explaining what they learned. And in some tests they did it individually. They are invited to do individually. In some tasks I provide the tool for them to collaborate and to share. So the book mirrors my teaching, and my teaching mirrors my book. And I came up with the rules how to work with my book. And I kept in mind the words of Edison: genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And the other one is, I haven't failed, I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. So, and I also kept in mind my own principles in my life. So these principles are practice. Attitude is the key because it's a path to success, because with what attitude to come to class, to start doing something, if you have open mind and you have open heart to new learning, you will succeed. And it's important to reflect wherever you are. It's a very important, and that's why in every course my students write blogs, and they use them after they even graduate from my courses. And you test your findings, your new learning, you test with your friends, with your colleagues. So it's really a key to success, key to mastery. And experience, and it's important to, it's also connected with attitude. If you come and you are ready to learn, you have to be ready to fail, because through failure you learn that you have the new learning. So these are principles that I used to introduce and rules how to work with a book. And I also use the format. I chose the format for the workshop using 5 E's. It's designed by renowned scientist and chair of the lab in Colorado, Bybee, the 5 E's. And I taught, and I found it very in unison with what I was doing all these years. I designed my courses using this in my learning management system for every course. So, and these are my chapters, echoing how teachers influence new generations of learners, a new school year begins, and I kind of lead students that when you start, you have to create a community of learners, and then I lead them to look at themselves, who they are as educators, what philosophy of education they have. And after they discuss that and identify that, they dive deep into the approaches to teaching. And the following chapter is about art and of teaching well. So, and I teach them how to, and that's what my methods courses are about, is how to use diverse ways of teaching, how you use controlling strategies, I call it in the book, controlling strategies of teaching direct instruction lessons, and how to facilitate students learning through inquiry and cooperative learning. So I design templates, and then there is a chapter post-pandemic pedagogy, and a special chapter on selecting the right digital tools for the right educational settings. And as far as the echoing is concerned, it's a unique aspect of teaching. I teach my students methods of teaching, and then they use those methods to teach their students. And in essence, I hear the echo. They use the methods that I just taught with their students, and then you see the echo of them in their learners. And so I want to have some examples. As I said, that my teaching is set for the book, and that my book is really the way I teach. So I created interactive. I always, because I was posting all my syllabi online, I created interactive syllabus. And this is the example of this year's syllabus. And on the bottom, if you see that I introduced, there are a few golden coins hidden in the text of the syllabus. Students were invited to find the coins. There were about 5 coins, and they have to read. And they, in every coin, there was a task. It has to either reflect on something, or to learn something, or to implement something. So from the first steps, even we were not in the course, but they were reading the syllabus and they were already learning. And so I don't know if I have time. If I wanted to share. So there are a few. So I introduce all these things, and so as you noticed, I use Bitmoji, because Bitmoji, there was a Bitmoji craze throughout pandemic time, and I decided that I introduce my students to Bitmoji, and I actually gave them an assignment to create their own Bitmojis. And so students by the following class, I designed a slideshow, and the students, all students designed their own Bitmojis in Bitmoji's classroom. And this is, again, this is an example of echoing, because again, I introduced the concept from the current situation. Bitmojis substitute for immediacy. Teachers wanted to show the presence in the materials that they were distributing, or they were teaching using slideshows. They had, but they were teaching remotely. They wanted to create this essence of presence. So my students now, they're designing their lessons, and they teach using Bitmoji's classrooms. And another way of example of is each semester I would use a different tool to introduce and also implement. So ThingLink, I use ThingLink to for the field work, for where my students were designing lessons and teaching ThingLink in science classes, for teaching sensory gardens and teaching about plants. There was a unit plan. And VoiceThread I use during the time, usually in science fair in Bishop Dunn School, happens in the spring, but this course was in the fall, and I wanted to create this participation of students doing the projects of science fair projects. And to do that, I created this virtual science fair projects using VoiceThread. Students were creating their experiments, they created their posters, digital posters, and they were posting, and then they were interacting. They were visiting each other's projects and posting. I have a link, but I'm afraid to use because of the time. But so they were visiting and giving comments. They were asking questions, though it happened virtually. So, another way, just to show the triple echo, I used Flipgrid. I used Flipgrid for students to send video messages to my teacher candidates. Designed their video messages to the students at school in the 4th grade, where they were going to teach their lessons. They had to introduce themselves using Flipgrid to tell about their talents, what their unique talent they had, and also ask questions about science. And what happened is when I asked the teacher of the school to share the Flipgrid with the school children, my students were shocked, positively shocked, that when they got the responses from school children. And so it's not clear enough, but some of them got 3, some got 2, but everybody got a response from school children. And not only that, what happened is some students posted they used Flipgrid to ask questions. And this third slide is from Hannah Lee. She asked a question to my students: what made the earth? And that she wanted to answer after all. So it was a triple echo. So my students used the idea, they used it at school, and then they echoed with the students from the field work. And introduce 5 E's. This is an example of also 5 E's, how I use it again in the first days of semester to introduce to a scientific method. Students go through this project learning about scientific methods, how to use scientific methods and what is scientific method is. And they go through the 5 E's. They explore, they explain what it is, and they share. And every student in class was encouraged or challenged to become a member of a company, to become a CEO of a company that helps schools to use scientific method. It was a fest of creativity because they were supposed to create, use digital tools to create their presentations about their companies. And they used bitables, they used different tools that help them express themselves. And they also shared their project on a special board, and they shared their ideas, they shared their projects, and they reflect. They reflected on each other projects and shared their experience. And what happened next is the students started teaching at school, and they teach using 5 E's in their lessons. So this is an example of one of the lessons that students, I also use examples with the permission, because in every class I have a consent form. The students submit consent form that they allow me to use their work for educational purposes. And so the chapter, so all of this prepared me for the chapter, the art of teaching well, designing engaging lessons. And what is interesting is that students, when they come to usually my classes, they are ready to teach directly. They because they know this formula: I do, we do, you do. They knew about this. They rarely exposed to inquiry, which is 5 E's. And I always wanted to create a special template and something for students to remember cooperative learning. And this time during sabbatical, so I had this time, and I came up with the formula for cooperative learning, and I based it on the circle, because in the circle everybody is connected. So connect to with the students and inform them and inspire them for collaborative project, assign roles, collaborate on a learning product, and in the end, evaluate, reflect, and provide feedback. So I designed template, and I designed a slideshows template, because students, and especially now students are teaching, and they're teaching using slideshows or prezes, but slideshows, Google Slides are very helpful. So they design, and that I designed to help them, because it was always difficult. We have a rubric, we have criteria, we have descriptions of parts of the lesson, but I really sat down and designed those templates, slides templates for students to follow. And it's not that they must use all the parts, but these are kind of guidelines that they have to use in order to follow the diverse types of teaching. For direct instruction, it's one template, for inquiry is another, and for cooperative learning is totally different. So that was my workshop. But at the same time, I started, when I started writing, I felt that my hands are, my hand started writing the lecture, because I started making deviations about the concepts. So I started, that was my second part. It's my second book, critical book. So I started, my theoretical voice was telling me to describe this. So I started writing ideas and insights about what's happening in education, in current education. So it's an extensive theoretical foundation of American constructivism, from Dewey to Bruner, actually is squandered in practice. And the teachers are using direct instruction, which is actually strangles learning, and teaches students learning facts, and they're drilled because the tests are dominating in the situation in education. Learners are not trusted, but compelled, and they are not collaborators but passive recipients. And so it's mostly, according to Club of Rome, there are its tendencies are to maintenance, not innovative learning, which requires to live in our very ever-changing world and complex world. But at the same time, this digital revolution shows the transforming power of technology. Emerging technologies is constructivist by nature. It forces teachers to change pedagogy from direct to indirect, from measured to engaged, equip students with tools to safely access, process, and reflect on the information. Students become, from consumers, students become producers, contributors, publishers of new learning shared in, through digital media. Learner transforms from an assessment focus away from final outcomes to process itself. And there are special tools to do that. Just recently, and by the way, there was a competition among technologists, educational technologists, how to adjust their tools to remote learning. I was amazed at Pear or Padlet. They designed tools to help teachers to guide students' learning and equip them with the tools of formative assessment for the beginning of the lesson, throughout the lesson, and in the end of the lesson. And my students really, right now, they discovered this and they're using it in their teaching. Oops. So, power up learning with technology. The pandemic served as a reactive rather than voluntary immersion of teachers in distant learning and students in remote learning. The task I have tackled with the less we teach, the more we learn is to empower both teachers and learners with a better understanding of constructivism powered by technology. As teachers understand and embrace the power of technology and master the arsenal of technological tools, they think creatively. They wisely use pedagogy to create conditions for personalized, engaged learning. And transformed by technology, teachers transform themselves. Their pedagogy, and the learners in the classroom. Teachers are exchanging ideas. They are very generous in sharing their ideas. And, YouTube became like an encyclopedia or another university of learning how to teach innovatively. And so my two books kind of converged after all. The opportunity to import from digital technology back into classroom the key elements of constructivist philosophy. Post-pandemic schools teaching and online learning, teaching and learning are transformed, and digital technology allows students to be independent and collaborative learners. And of course, there are interests for the future. So the questions are, what did teachers use to adapt to these situations? What I saw blossoming teachers, and what helped them blossom their pedagogical creativity. So what ways teachers use and students use to connect with each other and with other classrooms and with other experts and authors of the books. How innovative lessons were designed, how digital tools were used to engage students and teachers in active learning. So, and I want to finish the book with a quote from Ernest Hemingway, but replace the word. The hard part about writing a book is finishing it. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm open to questions if there is time.
Thanks, Ludmila. That was very, very interesting. I don't know if we have questions in the chat.
No, there are none, but anybody can be free to ask.
Yeah. Right, don't let that stop you. We certainly can entertain some questions now.
Well, I don't exactly have a question, but I will say I applaud your embracing of technology. And considering where you had come from too, that's quite a challenge. But I think that just the embracing of technology too is fraught with difficulties because there's so much of it, and trying to disseminate how to use the tools, what tools to use is not such an easy task. And I'm guessing maybe this is a question. Was it a process of discovery of trial and error in terms of what worked with the students and what didn't?
Yes, of course. And that's how you learn and how you select. Right. Of course, I first of all, I mastered those tools myself. And in order to teach students, I had to know what the tricks and tips are. Sure. So, and it was a really fascinating process. And that's why each time my students to say, I didn't graduate from information technology courses or schools. I learned all by myself. It's just because of my nature of innovator. And I'm open to learning and I want to explore things. And it works. I saw that, you see, I came from the country without technology. I realized the power of technology. I use technology to help me to teach you. And now take these tools, use these tools in teaching your students. And of course, it's always you know, it's always try and error, right? But I selected tools that really help students. First of all, help students to express themselves. Helps them to connect, to collaborate, and the tools that allow them to explore and reflect. So these are the major tools that we need, especially in our educational division. So these are the tools that I use. Blogging is important. They sometimes struggle because they didn't use blogs before, but by the end of the course, students really are, they discovered blogging because it really, when they summarize the course, they come back and they read their blogs and they see, oh, wow, how much I've learned. And they really discover. And I usually also use collaboration. And so from the first day in my class, I do, for example, I do treasure hunt. And I send on the first day, they explore some things in the syllabus, but then I give tactile tasks. They go to Division of Education to meet our management assistant, and they had to ask questions to find something, and they come back as a group, and then they create slides about, and I have usually for the first class, I have a slideshow that they have contribute a slide about themselves and about their cooperative learning group, because they will be throughout the course. In every course, I have cooperative projects, collaborative projects. So, and from the first days, they interact. And I use forum. During the first week, there will be 200 something posts on the forum, because they come back, they share, they exchange, and they start supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
So thank
Ludmila,
you for the question, Chris. Yeah.
Someone asked if you could put up the list of online tools again on screen.
Okay.
And also Evan has a question.
All right.
Thanks, Vivian. My question was actually very similar to Chris's. I apologize, I missed the first half of the talk because of a class. But my question was kind of along the lines of Chris, where there are a lot of great technologies out there. But I think part of the issue that you run into is not only the ability of faculty to master them, but the ability of students to take on all these technologies, especially all at once. And I think especially coming into this semester where so many of courses were online, would it be helpful for faculty to have greater discussions about which technologies might be able to be shared across different classes, so that students aren't trying to learn, 8 different new technologies at the beginning of one semester?
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, I am now in professional development, just luckily. I'm in professional development committee, and that's what we are discussing right now and thinking about. We can combine with ATAC, which I became the first chair, and I actually contributed to making this a standing committee. But as far as for example, while I'm using a lot Google Docs and I'm using Google Classroom, I think Google has it all. And for example, this can be used as a learning management system, because right now we are using Google Classroom for fieldwork. But I find it interesting, and I would be to prepare my students for fieldwork to use Google Classroom. First of all, I did the training also on Google Classroom, but I realized, and I created, in each class, I created Google Classroom, and I realized that we can use in our courses Google Classroom, because it has all the tools we need. Then there is a discussion, the forum, there is assignments, and what is wonderful, it also has tools that sometimes I'm missing in learning management system that we use now. There is a place where we can privately interact with students. You can even see how students work on the documents, because they're posting everything on Google Classroom, and you can even see how students work. You can interact and intervene in the middle of their work, and then you can give your comments to students and see feedback. They see your feedback and they come back. So yes, I absolutely, that's what we should do. We should have, especially now, we should have more professional development and conversations of an exchange of what tools professors are used, faculty use, and connect with students and engage them in active learning. And I think this summer was really amazing with the lecture breakers and our conversations. And so I totally agree. Thank you, Evan. Thank you.
Ludmila, were you going to put that slide up?
Oh, I think as I closed, where is it? All right, just a moment. I closed it recent. Oh my goodness. Where I'm not. My oops, okay. Oh, right here. All right. Okay, just closed up. Just a moment. I find the slide. Oops. Where is the slide? Oh, here you go. All right. Now I have to share. Sharing. Here you go. Yeah, here you go. Here it is. Well, these are just minimal. I have more tools. Barbara? So what happened?
Do you see it?
Do you see it?
Yes.
It's visible on the screen.
It's up on the screen. You're good.
Yeah.
There. Here we go, a little bit bigger for everybody.
So Padlet is for collaboration. Pear Deck is Pear Deck actually is an add-on on slides. You can add Pear Deck, and when you design the lesson, you can choose the templates that they already have for the beginning of the lesson, how to check students' understanding, for the middle of the lesson, for the end of the lesson. So and they have critical questions. They have graphic organizers for different subject areas. It's amazing, and they just excel during. And by the way, there will be, I think, in November they are doing Pear Deck Fair, and I participated in their first fair during pandemic time. They had phenomenal teachers and keynote speakers. They touched topics of diversity, social justice, and how teachers are using different tools to address those issues. So Neopod is a tool that also type of Pear Deck, and there is this teacher, Michelle Ferrer. So she uses Pear Deck, and she created a tutorial to teach other teachers how she kind of walking through how she uses Neopod, how she designs the lessons, and then how she's teaching this. It's just amazing. Symbaloo is a web mix, and you can create, and I also participated recently in a webinar. Symbaloo came up with tools that you can use in remote learning. these tiles, this is WebEx, no, Symbol. So you WebMix. So you can create the whole lesson using tools. In each tile would be a tool, or there will be text, and then you can walk through this, and there is learning path. You can send students to differentiate instruction. You can send students in one corner, there will be a group of students using those tools, in another the other. So it's just amazing. ThingLink, it's a digital poster. You can also create lessons using videos, using text, using images, using and you can create a series of paths using ThingLink. Well, Flipgrid is an amazing tool. You give voice to your students. Flipgrid is became also very active during this pandemic time, and students are teachers are sending Flipgrids to students, and students record their voices back. And they also came up again with a new tool. It's like mini voice, mini videos that you can create screencasts for your students and teach very little tutorials. Loom is another screencasting tool. There is a Screencastify, and it also, what is interesting, that the designers of these tools, they make applications. They made that you can use on iPad, you can use on iPhone, and so Edpuzzle is a tool that the teacher can use. You take the video and that you need for your class, and you can create a learning experience by adding questions. You can even record and add your recordings addressing students, but you have to create your account, and you have create your class, and then you post. I have, for every class I have a puzzle space, and then you select videos and you create you want them to watch this video, but then you create in between in fragments, or you can create a combination of different videos, but you create fragments with your questions, and they are forced to answer those questions, and the answers will come to your email. So it's a kind of, it's a feedback. So you can see how students learn and what the students are learning. So these are, yeah, there are so many tools that I tried, and of course I not mentioned half of them that I tried and used.
Ludmila, are these, Vicky had asked a question about whether these are free tools?
Yes, most of them are free, and especially during pandemic time, they gave prime accounts for teachers. Right now, I think Pear Deck, they have when I design my lessons, I use Pear Deck, and they say you have 40 days of prime features. And some of them have not expensive. For example, ThingLink, I paid $15 for subscription. So they make it available, and yeah.
Any other questions? It's getting a little bit late, but any other questions quickly before we wrap up? If not, I want to thank Ludmila again. It's always very inspiring to hear her talk about all the great technology that she has explored and utilized in her class. She has been a trailblazer at the Mount in this way. I've seen it with my own eyes for these last 15 years. So thank you again, Ludmila, for sharing that with us.